So the decision over whether to start a blog or a YouTube, it's actually quite an important decision, and you really want to make sure that you make a really good and well-informed decision. So to give you a bit of context, I have both a YouTube and a blog. I've had my blog for about 5 years now, and my YouTube I've had for 5 months. And so I feel like I've had a bit of time on both platforms where I can actually give you a honest and well-rounded overview of both platforms and hopefully help you decide which platform you can start off with. And so by the end of this video, you should have clarity and enough information that you can make a balanced and well-informed decision over which platform to start off with. So before we get into the actual tips, I really just want to caution you against something called shiny object syndrome. And shiny object syndrome is really that thing where you look at all the different platforms, you look at people who are succeeding with their blogs or with their YouTube channel, and you just want to do all the things because they just look nice. And this is definitely something that I've struggled with, but it's so important that you pick one platform to start off with. Because I'll tell you this, I've had a blog for over 5 years now, and the moment I added YouTube to the mix, like things got hard. So there's no point starting off with both platforms just so that you can kind of test the waters and see how things go. I would highly recommend that you start with one platform. And I'm just going to be going over some of the things that you should be considering or thinking about when it comes to picking your platform. So now the first thing that I'm going to mention that you can think about is the level of difficulty. And I'm putting this first because I've had people ask me, which one is easier, blogging or YouTube? And I'll be honest, both of them are really, really difficult. And so before you even get started, it's important to realize that both platforms are difficult. One is not easier than the other. One is not going to require less effort than the other. It really comes down to what your goals are and, what type of content you want to put out. So if you're choosing to put out content, say once a week, versus once a month, obviously the amount of effort and the amount of difficulty that goes into putting out that content is going to be different. Also depends on the quality, and how deep you want to go into your content. So are you trying to put out content that's very surface level, or are you trying to put out content that's well researched, well thought through, and well written or well produced? So the level of difficulty is really going to depend on your goals and really what it is that you want to achieve from each platform. So the next thing to think about is your interest. And it's so important to think about your own interests because at the end of the day, wherever you are creating content, you want to make sure that you enjoy what you're doing. And so think about where you currently spend a lot of time. Are you more interested in watching YouTube videos, or are you more interested in reading articles and blog posts? So think about that because that will inform your decision. When it comes to creating content, you spend a lot of time engaging, and you want to engage. If you're making blog posts, you want to engage with other bloggers. And if you generally don't enjoy reading, you're going to have a hard time engaging with other people who are creating written content. And so kind of on the same wavelength, the next really important thing to think about would be your personality. And so some platforms are just better suited for a certain kind of personality than others. So YouTube is generally really good for people who like talking and sitting in front of a camera and talking, people who like public speaking, people who, I think people who are extroverted may have an easier time on YouTube, but that's not to say that introverts cannot be successful on YouTube as well. Because I am an introvert, but I'm able to make YouTube videos. YouTube is more of a platform where you're just kind of like at the forefront. So if you're someone who likes to be seen and likes to be heard, YouTube might be a good platform for you. But if on the other hand, you prefer just kind of hiding and creating your content and not having anyone see your face, then definitely blogging would be better for you. The next factor to think about is your time. And what I really mean by this is certain platforms require you to be a little bit more strategic with your time. Because when you are making a video, you really have to plan out your time more strategically. So even if you were making a vlog, or a day in the life type of video, you need to plan out when you're going to make that video, what part of your day you're going to record. So if you're making a sit down type of video like this, for some people, they may really depend heavily on daylight. And so they can only make their videos at certain times of the day versus blogging, where you can create blog content pretty much anytime. If you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't sleep, you can sit there at 2 a.m. in the morning and write a blog post. You know, you really don't have to structure your time as much when it comes to blogging. And so if you are someone who is limited in terms of time or already has a hard time kind of staying consistent with your content, it'll be a little bit easier to stay consistent with blogging just because you can be a little bit more flexible with your time. Another thing when it comes to time is the fact that I feel like making YouTube videos takes a long time as well. So one video that you're watching can take hours to make. And even before I sit down to make this video, I have to outline the video and do my research on the topic that I'm going to be talking about. And then to sit down and make the video, like a 10-minute video can take me sometimes 30 minutes to record. Sometimes 40 minutes, sometimes even more. And so it takes a long time to research, plan, film, and then you have to go and edit the video. So that's something to think about when it comes to creating YouTube videos. Now, if you want to create a really well-written blog post, that can also take a lot of time because, you know, you also have to research, plan, do your draft, and then edit your blog post. So it's not to say that blogging is really fast and doesn't require a lot of time, because it does. But I feel like YouTube just requires you to be a lot more strategic with your time, which can be difficult if you're someone who's already short for time. And so the next thing to think about is your audience. So it's really important to think about your audience because firstly, you want to know what platforms they're on. And then you also want to think about what kind of content they would enjoy looking at or what kind of content they would enjoy consuming, and what would resonate best with them. And so thinking about your audience is so important. You also should be thinking about, you know, even just the kind of content that you're putting out. Think about how best you can present it so that it resonates really well with your audience. Another factor to consider would be cost. And when it comes to cost, I would say that blogging actually has a lot more costs associated with it than YouTube does. Because when you want to start a blog, there's so much that you have to pay for. You know, you have to think about your domain, your hosting. If you are getting a premium theme, you have to pay for that. There's definitely a lot of cost associated with it. However, with YouTube, really all you need to start a YouTube channel is your phone. You know, you may choose to invest in a better camera or lighting or a microphone or whatever, but you can start a YouTube channel with nothing more than your phone. You don't have to spend any money whatsoever to start a YouTube channel. The next thing you want to consider is the level of expertise or the packaging that you want to present. With blogging, it is a little bit easier to package yourself and to make yourself look more like an expert. It's easier to make your blog look more polished because all you really have to do is just write. And you want to just make sure that you write well. Whereas with YouTube, it's really easy to spot the pros from the people who are not so professional. Because with YouTube, it all comes down to your camera, your lighting, your microphone, and just everything else that comes with, you know, producing a YouTube video. You want to have good music and good editing, and you want to have generally a good presence in the way that you speak and present information. I think there's just a little bit more that comes with producing a YouTube video, that it's harder to make yourself look more polished or more like an expert. Another factor to consider would be visibility. And so both YouTube and blogging are pretty good for gaining visibility. And so the reason for that is because on both platforms, you can actually create searchable content. On your blog, you can leverage SEO to drive traffic to your blog from Google. And then on YouTube, because YouTube is actually a search engine on its own, you can also leverage the power of search to drive traffic to your content. So when people search for questions to an answer they have on YouTube, you know, your video can show up. And so that's really the power of both blogging and YouTube, because people can find you when you position yourself in the right way to answer questions that they're already searching for. However, I will say that in my experience, YouTube is a little bit easier to gain visibility. And I think the reason for that is because you're already on the platform. You're searching for questions because you know that you expect to find a video that's going to give you the answer to that question that you're looking for. So it just gives lots and lots of opportunities for people to find you and find your content. I would say with blogging, it's a little bit harder to drive traffic using SEO because let's be honest, you're competing with a lot of other bloggers. It is still possible if you do it well. In my experience, it has been a little bit easier to drive traffic using YouTube versus blogging. The other really important thing about visibility is engagement. And so with both platforms, it's really important to engage with other users in a similar niche to you, or just engage with people in general. The next thing to keep in mind would be the connection. And so by connection, I really mean the connection that you can have with your audience. They're watching you, they can see your mannerisms, the way you talk, the way you move. They can really decide whether or not they like you, and vice versa. You can do the same a little bit easier with YouTube. Versus on a blog, it's harder to connect people emotionally through writing. It just is. You know, some people are really amazing writers and they're able to really grab people's attention, but I think it's a lot harder to do that versus with YouTube. You're able to just kind of form a deeper and more meaningful connection with your audience. And so the last thing that I wanted to talk about was money, because both platforms actually allow you to monetize your content. And you can actually monetize your content in pretty much the same way on both platforms, but there is a key difference. On YouTube, you can monetize using Google AdSense. And so basically you get paid a small amount of money to have ads on your video. But there is a catch, because on YouTube, there's a certain criteria that you have to meet before you can monetize your content. And I think that is 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours in the span of a year. And so it is quite difficult for someone starting out to meet that criteria. Whereas with blogging, you can actually monetize using ads like from day one if you want to. So there are a lot of different ad companies. A lot of them do have criteria for who they work with. And so obviously if you have, much higher page views, more companies will want to work with you. So even if you started off your blog today and say you have 10 page views per month, you can still monetize that blog. You won't be getting a lot of money, but you can definitely still monetize your blog from day one. And so I think that's the major benefit in terms of monetization that you can do with blogging. Obviously, there are other ways that you can monetize your content. I will be making another video talking about that. But in my experience, blogging is a little bit easier to monetize versus YouTube. And so those are really the things that I would advise you to think about when you're considering which platform to start off with. And like I mentioned, the platform you choose is really up to you, and it really is going to be based on your goals, your experience, your personality, and all those other factors. So you want to make a decision that kind of feels right for you. And so just remember to stick with the one platform. Get really comfortable with that platform, grow it as much as you can, and then when you're comfortable, then you can add another platform. And so for me, like I mentioned, I do have both my blog and my YouTube channel. And I'm choosing to do both with the primary focus on my YouTube content, which is interesting. But I chose to kind of focus on YouTube for at least the next couple of months because it's a platform that I've always wanted to be on, to be quite honest. The main thing is really the fact that I love YouTube. I'm always on YouTube and I'm always watching YouTube videos. And so it just kind of makes sense for me to create because it's easier for me to engage with other YouTubers when I'm always on the platform. However, I also love vlogging. It's something I've been doing for so long and I absolutely love it, so I won't be stopping. And so I'll most likely kind of just be repurposing my YouTube videos on my blog and then just kind of updating old blog posts and creating new blog posts, when I feel necessary. And so my goal for the next few months is to really focus on YouTube as my primary content platform. So I really hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please leave a comment and let me know what platform you're deciding to start off with. Also, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you found the video helpful. It really just helps me to know what kind of videos you guys are enjoying. And then subscribe and hit the notification bell if you haven't done so already. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week.